How much do you have left to sluice?
I mean, there's a fair bit in there.
Like a couple days?
I'd say, yeah, probably 3 days.
1 minute ago, something incredible just happened at Parker Schnabel's claim. This jaw-dropping moment was so unexpected that even his crew member couldn't believe their eyes. But before we delve into the mind-blowing discovery that is sure to change the gold rush as we know it, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications because this story isn't your regular mining story. It is a masterpiece revelation that will leave you wanting more. So let's retrace our steps to where it all began. Picture this, the deep crevices of the Yukon, where Parker and his team had been pushing through one of the hardest mining seasons they had ever faced. They were going through the most challenging times, from equipment breaking down to the unpredictable weather and even the sudden rise in fuel prices that was eating into their margins. Things were getting really tight, so no one really saw what happened next. If there was one thing everyone knew about Parker Schnabel, his team and viewers alike, it was that he wasn't the kind of guy who took too well to failure. He hated the very idea of it, and would do anything to avoid failure. So everything he gained, every ounce of gold he got, wasn't a matter of luck. It came from all the hard work he put into it, and with every setback he faced, more and more money was gone. But that wasn't the only thing he lost whenever there was a setback. It was also eating away at his pride. When Parker Schnabel returned to the Yukon, he didn't realize how much things would change. This time, he wasn't just striking gold. He was also going against the book and taking a ride on the wild side with no harness on. In a single, painstaking mission that went on for 4 days, Parker executed a solo excavation that mined a certainly unbelievable $75 million in raw gold. This wasn't an ordinary haul. It was so far from it that even veteran miners and fans couldn't believe their eyes. This mind-blowing discovery came from all those days of hard work. It was just Parker and his specialized machinery, and a claim that everyone else had written off as worthless for over 50 years. You see, Parker had had enough of playing by the rules. He was more interested in following his gut instincts as well as the trail. Where the industry saw failure time and again, Parker had a different instinct, and he had calculations he believed in wholeheartedly. He followed through on them, all the way to this generational opportunity that can only be a result of planning, preparation, and possibly the hand of divine intervention. To truly understand how much of a big deal this all is, you have to remember where Parker has come from in his entire mining journey. This has absolutely nothing to do with his early life and more to do with those hard seasons he faced that almost broke him. Back in earlier seasons of Gold Rush, several moments seemed bleak and fruitless. One time, Parker and his team fought to pull over 7,000 ounces from Scribner Creek, and it was a haul that was worth nearly $10 million at the time. This was the kind of work he put into where he was at now, and working that hard at the time made him one of the youngest millionaires in the mining world. However, thinking about the hardship he faced and the success he earned from it still doesn't compare to the discovery we are seeing now. This is something bigger and even more impressive than all his other claims. Parker utilized everything at his disposal to make this happen. From his impressive skills to his intuition for geology and his drive, which could only be described as relentless and bold. This is how he unearthed an abandoned piece of land, only to make the most profitable and high-stakes discovery of his entire career. If you really think about it, Parker's claim didn't happen just because. It happened because every dig mark and every bucket load and every recorded measurement was a well-thought-out and very intentional step towards solving the gold rush riddle of the century. Nobody could have possibly thought that the Yukon was hiding its most prized possession. Even underneath all that frost, there were buried pockets of gold, waiting to be touched by someone relentless, bold, and probably delusional enough to keep believing because that's what Parker Schnabel did. As you can imagine, after the discovery was made, people began to talk. Everyone was in awe and utter shock, so the news spread quickly. Miners across the Yukon started talking about what Parker had done, and the fact remained that this wasn't just another successful find. It was an epic lesson and a masterclass in self-reliance and geological mastery. No one could have ever imagined what was hidden beneath all the land of the Yukon, and if they did believe it, Who would have thought Parker would be the one to find it, and not some veteran miner in Yukon? Viewers also probably thought Parker had reached the peak of his career. He was already at the top, and not a lot of people thought there was more to come, but this claim proved that to be completely wrong. Because $75 million is way beyond anyone's wildest imagination, and it is the kind of claim that turns masters into legends. To truly understand how big a deal this whole thing is, a little backstory is in order. To put things into perspective, Parker believed so profoundly in this that he stood at the entrance of the Forgotten Claim, a place that many people practically ignored, and some even labeled it as cursed. The entire place was probably a time bomb, waiting to go off because time had buried the collapse-prone tunnels beneath layers of frost and ice. However, Parker had his reliable satellite imaging data, which was carefully cross-referenced with decades of geological anomalies, and it was a trustworthy piece of data that didn't lie. Beneath all the ruckus and fractured ground of the Yukon was a massive reservoir of gold that had not been touched for generations. For many years, locals had discussed a hidden fortune believed to be buried beneath the rock, estimating its value to be a massive sum. Many miners tried to reach it, but they were consistently met with failure. Most of them dismissed the rumors as mere crazy folklore, but Parker didn't. He had a strong intuition about it, and he knew he would persevere until he found what he was looking for. You might be thinking his ego or maybe arrogance was driving him, but that wasn't the case at all. He was primarily driven by his intellectual mind and a sheer force of focus, and above all else, he trusted the numbers instead of the stories of failure that had come before him. He went on this great big adventure, hoping to strike gold, and he did despite all the silent and empty expanse of the Yukon, and even with every terrifying step he took on the frozen ground. Some moments seemed like they could be straight out of a horror film. Moments where the wind and every sound of dried-out branches sounded like a warning to him. However, he kept moving, and at least he had his maps, which had been marked with all the complex tunnel systems that didn't appear in any official government or corporate records. You might be wondering if Parker's little adventure was all gold, and you would be right in wondering because it wasn't. There were moments where things felt bleak, but he had notes scribbled in the margins of the maps he had, and those notes hinted cryptically at hidden pockets of exceptionally rich ore, and even passages no one knew of. It almost felt as though the miners who came before him had left not just warnings, but also a trail of detrimental breadcrumbs. Parker cross-referenced the maps with century-old journals. He would study them endlessly, so that he knew all the final strategies and fatal mistakes of the men who had disappeared into this claim. One of the most horrifying facts was a rival miner who was known for his bottomless greed. The story goes that he attempted to claim this land only a few years before, but ultimately failed, and eventually he disappeared completely. This was what started the rumors of a curse, but Parker didn't care about this one bit. Instead, he went in fully aware of all the risks and leaned into it. The amount of work and energy he put into this was mind-blowing in itself. He did everything from sawing to lifting to leveraging and braving his way through all the rubble until the passage was finally open. The first night he spent underground wasn't the easiest. In fact, the only way to accurately describe it would be as unsettling. There was a certain aura about the entire place that wasn't easy to shake, emanating from the sounds that echoed and the tunnel's resemblance to the kind of relics that haunt you while you're asleep. It wasn't all sunshine and roses. In fact, it was the very opposite. However, Parker was the kind of modern miner who could defy all the superstitions of the past, allowing him to step right into the future. The journey to the gold wasn't a straightforward one. It came after many clues and several moments where Parker had to adapt to his surroundings. Every bucket of ore he pulled was intentional, almost as though he was going at the pace the mine itself was allowing him to. Then there were the test samples, which were run through his portable on-site spectrometer, and it confirmed what the map had already suggested. The truth of the matter was that the gold here wasn't just plentiful, it was also unusually dense and rich, and significantly more concentrated than anything modern geological or mining models could predict. So the environment didn't take it easy on Parker whatsoever. It was fighting back every effort he made. The frost on the tunnel walls would constantly choke his pumps and even freeze the sluice lines. Parker, who had decades of northern experience, knew the only way out would be to adapt quickly. So he did. He insulated vital lines with salvaged timber and heavy-duty tarps, rerouted hoses around frozen sections, and improvised a heat exchanger to keep the water flowing. As time passed and the hours turned to night, the mission began to change as well. This wasn't just mining. It was now a forensic excavation and exploration. Parker mapped out all the intricate parts, cross-checked with the century-old journal warnings against the modern imaging, and then he ran yield numbers while keeping a constant eye on the structural stability of it all. You have to remember that these were ancient tunnels, fragile due to the passage of time and immense geological pressure. However, he had reliable portable machinery to help cut through and guide him safely to where he needed to go. It was also a plus that he had his headlamp's brilliant LED light, which helped him see all he needed to see. So, he carefully marked the richest pockets, measured the yields in grams, and then tracked every structural weakness with a precision that was beyond excellent. Things were finally looking up for Parker, and what had initially started with a quiet unease was now overdriven by pure anticipation. The mine was slowly opening up, and everything seemed to be getting closer to his fingertips than he even realized. By the end of the second night, Parker had already pulled out several loads of high-density concentrates. The sluice boxes were filling faster than even his own calculations could have ever predicted. It was almost like the claim itself was daring him to keep going, and so he did. The inside and out of the Yukon held something greater than anyone could imagine, and Parker knew that now. He wasn't just mining anymore. He was discovering something that had been waiting for him this whole time. Through his time in the claims, Parker had to step out of his comfort zone. He was now an archaeologist and a treasure hunter, and he was determined to find all the treasures and even the relics held by the Yukon. At times, some things would happen that psyched him out, like how the light from his headlamp would catch the frost and how the shadows along the rock walls moved in ways that might have been a little creepy. By the third night, the claim revealed its mind-blowing and incredible secret. The ground beneath Parker's excavator began to tremble, and then a sudden and massive burst of ice-cold water sprayed across the floor as Parker tried his best to steady the heavy machine. Below it all was an enormous hidden lake that was still, deep and shimmering with what has been described as an impossible concentration of gold suspended beneath the surface. The chamber was unlike the narrow tunnels. Instead, it was a vast and natural underground pool with dark waters that reflected particles of gold that had been there for centuries. Parker was able to use salvaged planks, empty oil barrels, and even structural supports to quickly construct makeshift floating platforms that were strong enough to support his weight and that of a small piece of equipment that was needed. He knew that one slip or even one wrong weight distribution would be fatal, so he had to be strategic and careful. He was able to get across the platform, and then he peered through the water. That was when he found nuggets near the lake bed. They were dark and rich, and that was when it all hit him. This lake alone could account for more than half of the 75 million estimate that those rumors said would be there. While in the Yukon, there was a lot to be said about the entire operation. Even the silence of the cavern was defaming, and the only thing keeping the balance was the sound of water and the machinery. Parker felt a certain isolation. He was often left feeling like someone was lurking around just watching him. That was when he realized that there was danger. The game was slowly changing. It wasn't just about extracting the gold anymore. He also had to survive. The lake finally revealed more than just gold. Parker also recovered relics from its bed, 1,800 coins, corroded mining tools frozen and perfectly preserved, and even fragmented journals. Geological samples also revealed that the gold had been concentrated by unusual and ancient seismic events, indicating that nature had compressed wealth that would typically take millennia to accumulate. Finally, by midnight on the fourth day, everything fell into place perfectly. Parker hit the massive primary vein in the main tunnel, and gold lit up the walls under the floodlights like it was molten fire frozen in place. Following his instincts, he grabbed a handful of the heavy, dark ore. He also processed the raw earth with an intense and nearly perfect surgical precision. The sluices also ran at maximum capacity and pumps were under pressure. There was a point during the process where a large part of the main tunnel fell apart quite violently, leaving a wave of dust and shattered rock in the path of the chamber, thereby sealing off a large stretch of the vein. Parker pushed through the collapsed passage very carefully, and that was when he found it. a massive hidden pocket that immediately and nearly doubled the massive gold he had already taken. But the battle wasn't over just yet. The ground was still unstable, and with each step was a chance that the whole thing would fall apart. Every move Parker made was a sense of danger, but he kept on working and had to move even faster. He drew on his extensive experience to reach the end. Finally, the outcome was new, and the results were jaw-dropping. This was a historical discovery that was extracted from the main chamber's hull, the secondary pocket, and the lake combined. The total amount extracted was confirmed to be $75 million, and for the first time in hours, Parker was able to stand still, taking it all in. The haul had broken several records, and it was an operation that would forever define his career. Moving away from the Yukon, it is also essential to discuss Glacier Canyon in Alaska. Against the backdrop of frozen leaks and crazy winds, Parker Schnabel and his team have done the impossible yet again. This time, after months of high-risk exploration and exact drilling, the prodigy found what experts are already calling one of the most valuable modern gold finds in North America, a massive $95 million strike buried deep in the Glacier Canyon. This latest achievement, along with the Yukon's, not only puts Schnabel on the map as the face of modern gold mining, but it also redefines what is possible in the frozen frontiers. For many years, Parker Schnabel has been the gold mining world's golden boy. He was a prodigy who took over his family's mining business in his teens, and then he created an empire all on the back of his intellect and relentless drive. The Glacier Canyon is yet another massive operation that shows just how talented he is. This all came about when the satellite scans first hinted at unusual metallic formations beneath the glacier. They are irregular shapes and reflective veins buried under nearly 200 feet of ancient ice. Schnabel was beyond intrigued by the very thought of this, so he and his team launched a covert expedition, combining state-of-the-art drone mapping, thermal imaging, and ground-penetrating radar to confirm the presence of what looked like a gold network sealed within the canyon walls. The expedition into Glacier Canyon was the kind of thing you see in movies. Teams descended into the icy corridors armed with drills, sensors, and a massive sense of purpose. The first few days were tiresome, as temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius and avalanches loomed overhead, along with frozen terrain that threatened to swallow and destroy equipment. But then the drills hit pay dirt, and specks of gold first glittered in the ice cores. Then larger flakes appeared, and finally, massive nuggets were embedded within crystalline walls. With each extraction came even more revelations. It turns out that there was a vast underground network of gold veins, some of which were intertwined with streaks of platinum and copper, all of which were preserved for centuries beneath untouched ice. Schnabel himself described the moment perfectly when he said, "It was like striking sunlight trapped in the glacier. It was raw, pure, and wonderful." The deeper the team went, the more surreal the discovery became. Within weeks, they uncovered a hidden chamber, a cathedral of gold, as crew members described it, with walls encrusted in shimmering veins of gold and platinum that glowed under headlamps like liquid fire. While it was all well and good, extracting gold from frozen terrain had its own set of challenges. The instability of the glacier meant that even one wrong move could trigger catastrophic collapses. To counter this, Schnabel's engineers reinforced the tunnels with steel supports and controlled the heat systems to prevent structural cracking. They also went further to establish an underground refinery, which was actually a first in modern mining. It was a process where raw ore was melted and cast into ingots on site, thereby minimizing loss and the risk of theft. Each bar was cataloged, weighed, and airlifted to secure storage via a fleet of camouflaged helicopters operating under strict radio silence. At the end of the day, it resulted in a record-breaking yield that surpassed previous seasonal earnings and set a new standard for innovation in the frontier mining world. There were many challenges like nature, but that wasn't the only thing Parker and his crew had to deal with. Reports also emerged from rival operators who were attempting to spy on the entire expedition. They were tampering with sensors. He employed decoy dig sites, encrypted radio channels, and round-the-clock drone surveillance. The atmosphere became tense, and it also had a slightly military feel. With every single creak or echo, the whole team was either afraid of collapse or confrontation, And they were also living on the thrill of discovering gold. The team didn't let anything get in their way, and the more they kept going, the more their work paid off. The canyon didn't just yield large quantities of gold. It also contained rare platinum veins that pushed the total estimated value of the find beyond $95 million. Experts say that deposits like these are a once-in-a-century type of occurrence that form under unique glacial pressure conditions, which preserve the metals in their pristine form. Through all the hard work, Parker and his team could finally revel in their victory. After weeks of all that groundbreaking work, all the almost mishaps and sleepless nights, the final tally left the crew gobsmacked. It was tons of mixed gold and platinum ore that was carefully extracted and refined, and it was one of the richest strikes of Parker Schnabel's career. Video footage captured by drones shows just how massive the scale was. It reveals the veins glittering in the ice, as well as helicopters lifting gleaming crates into the night sky. It also shows Parker himself standing in the golden chamber with a mixed bag of expressions on his face, from exhaustion to disbelief and even pride. Schnabel himself stated that this wasn't just luck. It was planning, teamwork, and respect for the land. The glacier tested us every step of the way, but we proved we could dig smart, not just deep. Mining analysts across the world are all calling the Glacier Canyon strike a benchmark for the new generation of gold miners. This operation was completely different from traditional open-pit operations, and Parker's approach blended advanced technology with old-fashioned field instincts, and it was the perfect balance, and it's currently reshaping how modern prospecting works in extreme environments. A geoscientist from the University of British Columbia, Dr. Leah Fortin, explained it all perfectly when she stated that the precision and sustainability of Schnabel's Glacier Canyon operation marks a turning point in modern gold mining. He is combining science, innovation, and frontier grit, something that's rarely seen at this scale. When it comes to the Yukon Gold Rush, Parker was basically operating without a safety net. Every single piece of equipment, from the excavator to the wash plant, had the potential to fail. To get 75 million out of the ground needs a continuous and high-volume flow of water to wash the pay dirt. In an underground environment surrounded by ice, keeping sluice lines liquid was a constant losing battle. It was a miracle that Parker was able to pull through. With the help of his makeshift insulation, rerouted hoses, and the improvised heat exchange, a level of maintenance was underway. Parker's ambition through the whole thing was, in turn, a great testament to all the men who had failed in the exact location over a venture ago. He was able to utilize old journals and relics to essentially communicate with those men, thereby making his own adventure a success. The original stampeders that operated during the 1890s Klondike Gold Rush had to make use of crude methods like burning. This was the kind of process that took days to achieve, and they would use all the timber they had available, as well as fill the tunnels with lethal carbon monoxide. As time went on, they started to use steam points where they would drive steel pipes deep into the ground and pump live steam to thaw the earth. It's no surprise that the old methods were practically unstable, because when the ground was thawed unevenly, the tunnels would then cave in, trapping and possibly taking the lives of the miners. The whole time, the claim wasn't cursed. It was simply a geological mistake based on the fatal choice made in the past. What Parker got correctly was his understanding of why the claim was abandoned in the first place. He saw that the early miners had actually found the gold. Still, they lacked the heavy equipment and structural knowledge needed to hold it without falling into one disaster or another. His entire operation heavily relied on modern technology to extract the gold before the unstable nature of the structure would collapse on him. At the end of the day, the $75 million jackpot wasn't just a victory lap for Parker Schnabel alone, it was also a win for all the people who came before him. He had finally beaten all the geological and historical issues and extracted the gold. For Parker Schnabel, the win at the Yukon and the Glacier Canyon is just the beginning of a new frontier. One thing's for sure, Parker's claim isn't just about the money. It runs far deeper than gold or profit margins. It's a story of intuition, legacy, risk, and the incredible payoffs that only come to those who refuse to quit. For Parker Schnabel, every ounce of gold pulled from the earth represents years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and a determination that defied the odds. The claim that was once dismissed as a cursed venture, a place where other miners saw failure, has now turned into a testament to Parker's unwavering vision. What makes this even more extraordinary is that Parker didn't just stumble upon success, he fought for it. He trusted his gut when others doubted him, investing his own resources, time, and belief into land that history had nearly forgotten. Through brutal winters, broken machinery, and setbacks that would have ended most careers, he persevered. And now, as the entire mining world stands in awe, it's clear that his gamble has paid off. Parker Schnabel's name is now quite literally being written in gold. He's redefined what it means to be a modern miner, proving that success isn't just about luck or fortune, but about resilience, intuition, and faith in one's purpose. On the frostiest lands where dreams once froze, Parker carved his destiny into the ice and soil, leaving behind a legacy that will inspire generations of miners and dreamers alike. So, what do you think of Parker Schnabel's claim? Was it just the richest gold pocket in gold rush history, or was it something even more monumental that could change the landscape of mining as we know it? Share your comments below, because whatever the case may be, one thing is sure: the story is just getting started.